At first, it seemed routine. Jin of BTS flying to the United States again. For years, fans have grown used to seeing the global superstar's name pop up in flight trackers, airport fan cams, or quiet photos surfacing from LAX. Sometimes it's for business. Sometimes it's for a schedule big hit refuses to confirm. And other times, well, it's just Jin being Jin, appearing where no one expected him, always with a calm smile, sometimes alone, and often without media noise. But now, after years of speculation, an undeniable pattern is emerging. Jin has been coming to the US not just as a member of BTS, not just as a brand ambassador, and not just as a celebrity with global ties. There's something deeper, more personal, something he himself has never fully admitted aloud, but it echoes in his actions, in his choices, and in his silence. Jin loves American fans, and oh, this isn't just idol fandom fantasy. It's a quiet truth that's been building for years, tucked behind the formal press statements and diplomatic interviews. And those who've paid close attention, they've seen it, felt it, and now they're starting to talk. It started subtly. During BTS's Love Yourself, Speak Yourself tour in 2019, Jin's demeanor in the US cities felt different. Warmer, softer, more spontaneous. He laughed more during interviews in Los Angeles. He stayed longer on stage in New York. He waved just a little more tenderly in Chicago. Fans noticed. The difference was impossible to ignore. And then, something even more curious happened. Jin began traveling alone, sometimes with little to no fanfare, to cities like San Francisco, Boston, and even small towns outside the usual K-pop radar. No scheduled events, no performances, just private matters, the agency would say. But private for whom? Sources close to airport staff and a few lucky fans who encountered him said the same thing. He looked peaceful, like he was home. Home. A word so intimate, it almost feels off-limits. But for Jin, perhaps that's what the US has quietly become. A place where he can breathe. Not as worldwide handsome, not as the oldest young of BTS, but simply as Seokjin. In moments where Korean media speculated about Hollywood ventures, acting classes, or brand meetings, Jin was quietly visiting cafes in Brooklyn. He was sitting by the beach in Santa Monica. He was spotted at bookstores, smiling gently at fans who nervously approached him. There were no cameras, no bodyguards, just him, and often the same response. I just needed a little air. But what kind of air is a global superstar seeking in a land so far from Seoul? The answer may lie not in geography, but in energy. Fans in the US, time and time again, have expressed their love for Jin in a way that touches on something raw. Not just admiration, but emotional gratitude. He knows that in America, many fans turn to BTS not just for music, but for healing, for survival, for hope. And somehow, Jin always seems to understand this without needing to say much. When he sings Epiphany at US shows, something in his eyes shifts. When he answers questions in English, even when he stumbles, he smiles, not out of politeness, but out of real affection. He's not just grateful for his US fans. He's drawn to them. One former staffer, who asked to remain anonymous, revealed that during BTS's 2022 Las Vegas residency, Jin extended his stay long after the others flew home. He didn't tell many people, the staffer whispered, but I heard him say it to one crew member backstage. He said, "I like it here. I feel safe." Safe. In the middle of a bustling entertainment capital, the quietest member of the world's biggest band found emotional shelter. Not because he was anonymous, he wasn't, but because he was accepted, flaws and all, just as he is. Fans didn't demand perfection. They didn't ask for explanations. They just showed up. And that was enough for him. In recent months, after his military discharge, Jin has once again been spotted boarding flights to the US, this time more often, and with even less public context. Some say it's for training, others hint at solo projects. But those who know his heart believe there's something more. Something invisible but powerful. Love. A love not wrapped in scandal, drama, or gossip. A quiet love. A respectful love. A kind of emotional connection between artist and audience that doesn't need to be flaunted or explained. Jin doesn't need to shout it from a rooftop. He shows it by returning, again and again, to a country whose people, in his own words, see through my eyes, not just my face. Perhaps that's the answer to the question everyone keeps asking. Why does Jin keep going to the United States? Because maybe, for him, it's not just a place. It's a feeling, a memory, a voice from the crowd that made him smile at a time he didn't know he needed to. A note slipped into his hand backstage that made him cry. A fan who once told him, "You saved my life," and meant every word. So the next time you see a blurry photo of Jin walking quietly through JFK or boarding a flight from LAX with no schedule attached, don't ask why. The truth is already there, wrapped in every return trip, every soft gaze from the stage, every whispered, "I love you," he hears and stores deep within him. Jin doesn't just visit the United States. Part of him belongs here. Perhaps the most poetic part of it all is that Jin has never needed to declare any of this publicly. He doesn't tweet dramatic confessions, nor does he post long monologues on Weverse about his feelings. He never had to, because everything he feels, every bit of warmth, gratitude, and affection, he communicates through presence. In an industry where stars chase headlines and build hype around every move, Jin remains an enigma by choice. He doesn't need flashbulbs to validate him. His quiet arrivals and even quieter departures from American airports aren't moments for press frenzy. They are acts of sincerity. They are chapters in a story that only he and his fans truly understand. One might wonder why, in a world so desperate for noise, Jin continues to choose silence. But maybe that's the secret. The silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of meaning. Full of mutual respect. Full of all the unspoken emotions between an artist who gives everything and a fan base that simply asks him to be himself. He knows the eyes that watch him here are different. There is no demand for perfection. There's no expectation to perform every second. In the US, he can laugh too loudly at a cafe. He can mess up a few English words and still get a round of applause. He can walk the streets wearing a hoodie, invisible to most, until one soft voice breaks through the city noise with a trembling, "Jin?" And when that happens, he doesn't run or turn away. He smiles. He bows. Sometimes, he places a hand on his chest, his signature gesture when words aren't enough. And in that moment, something passes between them, something real. There are rumors, of course. Whispers of future solo projects tied to American producers. Invitations to film in Los Angeles. Late-night meetings in New York studios. The entertainment world spins its wheels, desperate to know what's next for Jin. But those closest to him will tell you, whatever the project, whatever the opportunity, the reason for his return is always the same. He wants to be here. That kind of want doesn't come from strategy. It comes from soul. And fans? They feel it. They've always felt it. That's why they wait at airports even when there's no official schedule. That's why they hang handmade banners at subway stations, long after his tour has ended. That's why they cry when he appears unexpectedly at events he was never announced for. They understand that Jin doesn't show up to check boxes. He shows up when his heart tells him to die. And one particularly touching moment during BTS's final US concert before enlistment, Jin stood alone at the edge of the stage long after the music had faded. The other members had begun their walk backstage, but he lingered, eyes scanning the crowd, lips slightly parted as if holding back something he wished he could say. And then he mouthed it, barely audible, but visible to those who knew how to look. "Thank you. I'll come back." At the time, many assumed he meant a return with BTS. But now, in hindsight, those words feel heavier, more personal. They weren't just a promise of career continuation. They were a vow of emotional return. A promise to come back to the feeling he had in that moment, to the place that had, perhaps unexpectedly, become part of his emotional home. Some artists make noise. Jin makes presence. He arrives not to announce, but to connect. He performs not to impress, but to share. And he returns to the United States not because he has to, but because something in him aches for the kind of love he feels here. It's softer. It's purer. It's human. So the next time someone wonders aloud why Jin, out of all the BTS members, keeps coming back to Los Angeles, to New York, to places that don't even appear on a map of K-pop relevance, perhaps the answer isn't in a schedule or a contract. Perhaps the answer lies in the quiet moment when a fan locks eyes with him, heart pounding, and says nothing at all, and he, standing before them, not as a superstar, not as a legend, but as Seokjin, understands everything.